Kathryn Landis, welcome to the conversation today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
It's a real pleasure to be sitting down with you. You're joining us from Brooklyn. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about effectively leading diverse teams. And when I say diverse, I'm not just speaking in the kind of traditional, gender, race, ethnicity kind of diversity. I'm also talking about cognitive diversity. I'm talking about generational diversity, all of the different forms of diversity as they manifest within organizations and within our teams. And frankly, we're in a time where I think diversity is well, it seems like an all-time high. And certainly from like a generational diversity standpoint, I think it definitely is an all-time high in terms of having 5 generations in the workforce simultaneously. And so it leads to all sorts of unique challenges and opportunities for leaders. And are you up to the challenge, in your leadership roles? And so that's what we're going to be unpacking and talking about together today. As we get started, I wanted to share Kathryn's bio with everybody. Kathryn Landis helps organizations accelerate success by empowering growth-minded leaders and their teams with executive coaching, team coaching, offsites, and leadership development training in today's dynamic business environment. Kathryn's insights and strategies have gained recognition in prestigious publications like Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, and Forbes, further establishing her reputation as a sought-after expert in the field. She holds an MBA from Northwestern University, certificate in executive and organizational coaching from Columbia University, among many other accolades and achievements. I'm going to pause there, Kathryn. Anything you would like to share about yourself by way of background, personal context before we dive on into the conversation?
Yeah, I think what I would most want to share is that I sat in the seat prior to launching my own organization as an executive and team coach. I worked for large Fortune 500 companies running marketing and sales. I've worked for startups. So I pivoted into this position because I didn't like how it
Mm-hmm.
felt in many ways. I had a bad leader and it
Mm-hmm.
changed my career trajectory. And I'm like, I want to go out there and I want to help leaders be better because I think everyone, your personal happiness and the way you perform and show up at work is so much improved when you have a great leader. And I'm on a mission to help leaders be great, which sounds cheesy, but I've done all the personality tests and I'm 100 out of 100 on altruism. So I got to get paid because a girl needs to eat. But besides that, I'm
Yeah.
here to help leaders.
Yeah, well, I love it. My kids ask me, like, Dad, what is it you do? Because, they know I'm a professor. They know that I like do these different things. I write stuff and whatever. And I basically say this exact same thing you just said. Like, my goal, my mission is to help leaders be better and to help organizations be healthier and just help people to have a good experience at work. Like we spend the vast majority of our waking hours at work, and the people you surround yourself with make all the difference. I mean, there are crummy jobs and poorly designed jobs and those sorts of things, but there's so much research that shows like if you have good coworkers, if you have a good leader, like a lot of that other stuff doesn't matter as much in terms of your personal satisfaction, your personal engagement, your willingness to kind of put in that discretionary effort. People are willing to be with a good team and a good leader. And the converse is also true. Like you can have a great organization, great products and services, a mission you believe in, um, even good
A great job, a
a
great
great
job.
job, great title, great pay, even good coworkers, but your boss sucks, and your life is going to be miserable. And
What
so, people
100%.
people end up bailing from those situations and seeking, knowing their value and seeking other places. So I mean it really is such an important thing. And I think another piece is just the fact that leaders usually aren't trained in leadership. Like they're promoted because they have technical expertise, because they have specialty, success in their specialty area, and then they find themselves leading people. And leading people successfully is a completely different skill set than usually what's required in a lot of the other areas of expertise someone may have had coming up through their career. That's not to say people can't become great leaders. I firmly believe this can be taught and this can be practiced and this can be learned and you can build those muscles, but you can't just assume that just because all of a sudden you have the title, people are going to like follow you well and it's going to be a healthy, sustainable environment. It just won't automatically be that. And in fact, the opposite is often true. It will kind of by default be unhealthy unless you make it healthy, right?
Yep. And to folks listening to this, I would say John Maxwell has a whole book on, and it just talks about the 5 levels of leadership. The lowest level of leadership is people following you because they have to, because they report to you. So you mentioned you teach. I also teach. So I teach one class a semester at NYU, and a lot of my students are, you know, individual contributors, or they don't have a team yet, and they say, well, how can I be a leader? Well, you can be a leader because when people follow you because of your influence or because what they
You're a
believe or
leader.
your
Yeah.
output, that makes you a great leader, not that direct reporting relationship. And typically the clients that I work with are at the C level. So
Hmm.
they've been in leadership a while, but you could also find yourself surrounded by folks that are afraid to tell you what they really think.
Absolutely.
Also find yourself trying to drive change, and it's tough, right? And trying to see around corners and bring the organization along and carrying that all on your shoulders, it's exhausting. So I come in as that third party, neutral
Hmm. Hmm.
person, and I can tell you what I really think and can bounce off and be a mirror for you and help support you thinking more expansively. So I love what I do.
Yeah, well, that's great. And you're absolutely right. Whether it's intentional or not, leaders very quickly, especially the higher you go, they can find themselves in a bubble, right? And you can try to proactively surround yourself with diverse voices and encourage people to push back and challenge your thinking and assumptions and whatnot. You can do all that, but kind of the dynamic is such that by default, you're going to end up having a lot of people, who might explicitly be sycophants and like yes people and only telling you what you want to hear. But even if that's not their intention, like people just tend to kind of go along with the flow of what their leaders are asking them to do and not explicitly challenging it all the time. And so you just very quickly find yourself in a bubble, and you just have to be extra proactive about finding those outside voices, finding other perspectives, challenging your thinking and assumptions, and really pushing on it, and even setting kind of the expectation within your own team like, hey, I expect in these meetings that people are going to push back on me. And if you're not, and you're disagreeing with everything you said, with everything I say, I'm going to like call you out and tell you you need to like challenge me. Like you literally have to do that, otherwise you're going to find yourself just in a complete echo chamber, despite whatever your good intentions might be. And so leadership is hard, not necessarily because it's rocket science. I mean, I think the basic principles of good leadership are honestly relatively straightforward, but it's hard because we're human. It's hard because we have our own baggage, we have our own, bad experiences, we have our own kind of biases around what leadership looks like and how we've seen it over our lives. And it requires a really consistent, intentional effort to improve our leadership capabilities. And it's something you never arrive at.
Yeah.
You just have to
And
continually be working on it.
I would add that we're all stressed,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so sometimes that doesn't necessarily equate to your best self coming out. I was talking
Absolutely.
to a client last week where I met with the CEO and the CHRO, and they said to me, everyone has great trust in this team. We have great trust on this team. Excuse me. And I spoke to the team members one on one. Well, no one felt comfortable being vulnerable with each other. And so if you're not able to be vulnerable, that means you don't trust, right? So you're not willing to raise ideas, you're not willing to speak up, you're not willing to, you're concerned about what other people might think. And so having a better understanding of where your team's at and what the opportunity cost of not moving the team forward can be incredibly valuable.
Hmm. Hmm. And so there's so many different like aspects of leadership we can hone in on, of course. But we're really going to focus the majority of our time today on like that diverse leadership, like leading diverse teams. And it's a bit of a fraught kind of space to even have conversations in right now. There's so much polarization around diversity, equity, and inclusion language. I mean, it baffles me. I mean, I understand, again, human nature is human nature, and I understand tribalism, and I understand, you know, the way media and social media drives clicks and kind of sows seeds of discontent in order to make money. Like it's just kind of the way it is. But man, it's a hard time now to proactively speak around inclusion efforts. And as a leader, there's LGBT stuff, there's race, ethnicity, gender, religious stuff, of course, all the traditional Title VII stuff. But then there's the diverse generational workforce that we're working in, and distributed teams across areas, and there's all the cognitive diversity, and there's all of the just socioeconomic diversity, and the various backgrounds people bring with them to the team. There's so much research that shows how valuable the diverse teams can be if led effectively, but they also can be incredibly problematic if they're not led effectively. Like it's not like an automatic that you're going to have a more successful team just because you check boxes of like different labels. Like it only becomes powerful when you leverage the diverse thinking and people like in productive ways challenging each other and getting everyone collectively to like better conclusions. How in your experience, do you work with C-suite executives and coaching and training them to help better navigate this kind of an environment where it's hard to address from a political standpoint, like there's just so much political division, but the reality is our teams are as diverse or more diverse than they've ever been, and it's our jobs to make them function well.
So I think the big trends that I'm seeing now more than ever is baby boomers retiring. So I
Mhm.
wrote an article last week for Harvard Business Review, what to do when your CEO is semi-retired but still calling the shots,
Yeah,
right? Because that happens more often than
a
not.
lot, a
And
lot.
it's not
Yeah.
necessarily just the CEO or other leaders that, are half in, half out. I've also seen this in
Mhm.
organizations where the founder still wants to be, very much involved, but still wants to be working from the south of France on the beach, for two
Yeah,
months out of the year. So I think, that can be a big challenge that I would put under that diversity bubble,
yeah.
as you said. I think another, you know, significant change is with Gen Z and leaders trying to figure out, well, what does it look like now? How do I prepare for the future of work in 2035? It's the way you hire, recruit is different, and I think that a lot of leaders are really frustrated with Gen Z. And it's interesting because I teach Gen Z at NYU, and you ask them, do you think you are not a hard worker? They would say no. They believe that they are hard workers. It's just showing up differently. So what's important is having a shared understanding of what the purpose is. What is the purpose of this team, right? Why are we coming together? What does good look like? What are we trying to achieve? What are our shared priorities?
Mhm.
What are the
Mhm.
ways of working? So don't describe to someone that the job is 8 to 5, and then when they work 8 to 5, say they're not putting in the hours, right? You got to be upfront. Um, and so
Or, or you say it's 8 to 5, so they show up in person, even though they think it's kind of dumb, to have required in-office mandates. They show up and then they see people not actually doing much work during 8 to 5, but just being butts in seats. And then they're not stupid and they realize that's dumb. And they realize, that just this arbitrary time frame or butts and seats mentality doesn't actually translate into performance. So like there's so many things that like Gen Z, just having been brought up differently, they think differently and they challenge these past kind of old assumptions around work schedules, work design, all of that. And they have higher expectations for leaders, than maybe when we were coming up, you're like, you just have to like suck it up, even though you have this like asshole boss. Like it's just part of the deal, and you just kind of figure out how to navigate it. And they've all gone through years of school where they've learned that that's not acceptable, and like you shouldn't be doing that. And they should be coaching and mentoring you and helping you develop in your career. And then leaders are like, oh, they're entitled. They don't want to work hard because they're not willing to put up with the stuff we put up with when we were younger. And I'm like, maybe it's just evolution.
I mean, I don't know. I was having a conversation with another client of mine earlier this week, and he was telling me that his organization, one of the challenges is that Gen Z doesn't want to work with people who they find unethical, and specifically unethical in their personal life. So, for
Yeah.
example, not saying you're doing this, John, but say you're married and you had an affair. I would then see you as someone who's like tainted and cannot be trusted. Whereas, or maybe, you're that person that's hitting on people in the office or whatever. I feel like at my age or in my generation, it's like, well, if he does what he does in his personal life, I don't agree with that, but that's him. As long as it's not happening in the workplace, I don't care. Or, I can still work with him. But now they're really taking things to heart. And in fact, this chief people officer is having such a struggle trying to manage all these Gen Z who are really wearing their, ethical standards, you know, I don't want to say on your sleeve, but leading with it. And so maybe they'll get more jaded over time, as some of us do, but it's very different.
Well, and I just look at that, and I'm like, good for them.
Yeah,
I understand you got to live in reality, and like people are flawed. We're all flawed. We all have, baggage, and we all have things that aren't ideal. But there's been way too much of a pass given to way too many people for way too long in terms of their behavior and what they say and they do. And yeah, I mean, maybe it's because I feel that way too, but I'm like, good for you. Like, I wish more people would be willing to call out bad behavior and yeah, I mean, it of course it erodes trust. Of course it does. It should erode trust, in my opinion. And so, like, I see that not as a negative for Gen Z. I see that as like, let's rise to the challenge of actually being the type of leaders we're supposed to be and not giving ourselves a pass when we do
I'm
stupid.
not saying it's a
Yeah.
negative. I'm saying it's a change.
It's
And
yeah, absolutely. You're
and
not saying
try,
it's a negative, but some are saying it's a negative
yes, yes.
because it's a change, and people are, they're just like, oh, come on, with the real world, and they'll spout off, all that kind of all those tropes. I'm like, but it doesn't need to be that way. And there's a whole generation of people who are saying, you know what, we're fed up and we're not going to deal with it being that way. Now you're right. They very well may become jaded over time, and this may shift, but at least for now, like let's see it as a call to action. Like let's be better.
Yeah, let's be better.
Anyways, you're absolutely right. Like there's a fundamental kind of mindset shift around how younger millennials and Gen Z are kind of approaching the world generally, how they're approaching work, and really their values, like what their values and priorities are now compared to, say, previous generations. Now,
Hmm.
it's also important to note that sometimes we put too much emphasis on like these age cohorts. There's also just the reality of like younger people tend to be younger people, right? Like when I was younger, I probably exhibited some of those characteristics more than I do now. When my dad was younger, or my mom was younger, they probably exhibited more of those characteristics than they do now, because part of it's life stage, right? Part of it's career stage, and it's not just when you happen to be born and like all of that. But there definitely is right now a bit of a reckoning for organizations as they're trying to figure out how to mesh together these different generational groups, who do have vastly different kind of views on a lot of things, and just different values and priorities, and how they prioritize those values. And that's not an easy thing to navigate when you're trying to create a culture that's inclusive, when you're trying to create a culture where people can understand, buy into, and live out the mission and the values of the organization. When you have people coming from all different directions on that can be a really tough thing to establish, and then to like carry forward with momentum, towards a sustainable end for the organization. And I don't have a super like snippy kind of, easy kind of answer to it, other than as a leader, you have to understand that that's the reality, and you have to lean into it, and you have to know your people. Like you just have to have very candid conversations with folks, and then hold yourself to a high leadership standard, and then work with your folks so that you can achieve it. Like I think that's what needs to happen. And in my experience too, most workers on teams they don't expect perfection. Like there's kind of this old mindset of like a leader needs to be show strength and don't show vulnerability, show strength and always you have the answer and you're gonna lead with authority and just really uh that sense of like things are more or less figured out and we're going to drive together to get there. That isn't necessary. Like that just isn't a necessary kind of a leadership style. And most people would prefer more authenticity and vulnerability, and they want success and they want to see progress and they want to see that we're moving forward and achieving our goals. But people aren't dumb and they realize when you're just spouting stuff and when you're not living up to it, or when there's unrealistic goals set by the organization and they're being held to something that's unattainable or whatever. Like so just be real about it, connect with your folks, talk with them, better understand them, coach and mentor them, and you're going to be in a way better position to just have a team that at least there's some psychological safety, at least there's some opportunity for people to come together, share their thoughts, their feelings around what you're doing, and hopefully collectively you get to a better united outcome that will help bring value to the market. And this doesn't just need to be kumbaya stuff. Like literally, this can help your team and your organization just be more effective and have better value, have better stuff, value products and services.
Yeah, and it just reminds me of, the fact that we all are human. One of the articles I wrote this year for HBR that people send me notes about consistently is about how, personal and professional crises sometimes hit at the same time. And the idea of recognizing it, giving yourself a break that maybe this is not the time to be an overachiever, right? And do everything for everyone, ask for help and see what can I do now just to survive? Because I think a lot of times as leaders, you feel like you do have to put that brave face on, you do have to march on, even when things are crumbling. And I wrote that based on my experience coaching a real leader, and I sent it to her after. But I think a lot of folks sometimes, well, maybe not Gen Z, but some other, more older folks feel like they have to have this, separate persona, and it doesn't have to be that way.
No, and in fact, with especially, I mean, it's this way with me too. I'm a Zennial, like I'm kind of that in between Gen X and Millennial few years, but like it's certainly this case with me, but with younger folks, it tends to be the case that they just see through it and it just erodes trust. Like I'm not stupid, and I can see when you're just like puffing out your chest and putting on a facade or a brave face, and I want you to include me in the strategic conversations around what we're going to do about this hard thing that we're facing, right? And I don't want you to pretend like things are fine or say things are fine to my face, and then I know there's meetings going on where
Or
everyone's
say
freaking
you're
out.
fine and you're not
Yeah,
fine.
yeah,
So,
absolutely. Like we just want people to be real, and that doesn't mean like you have to come in and like dump all your stuff on people.
well, I say bring your best version of yourself. You don't have to bring your whole version, right? So you
But
don't have to tell
that
everyone
doesn't mean
everything.
you have to have a mask on where you're just like putting on this facade all the time. So yeah, I think you've brought up some really great points. There's a whole lot more we really could discuss because this is a huge topic, but I know at the time I'm going to have to let you go here in a minute. Before we wrap things up, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, where they can find your articles, and help to improve their situation, and then give us a final word for today.
Yeah, what I'll do is I will give you a toolkit that I created. It's about a one pager to help leaders think about how do you navigate a multi-generational workforce. So I'll give that to you. I'd invite you to follow me on LinkedIn, Kathryn Landis, and then visit my website. But let's continue the conversation. As you mentioned, John, there's so much we could be discussing. I'm writing and talking about, how to be great leaders and have really high performing teams. And I'd love to stay connected.
I love it. Thank you, Kathryn. It's just been a pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Kathryn can do for you. Check out all of the great resources that she has to offer. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe. They can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.